G'day mates, it's Busta here, and before the video begins, I would like to give Native another huge shout out for sponsoring this video. So Native is a great company that provides safe, simple, effective products that people use in the bathroom daily. Their products are formulated without aluminium, parabens, and talc, and instead are filled with ingredients found in nature. Native have been super generous and allowed me to try some of their products in the past, and I've actually been using them for quite some time now. And the product has been reliably fantastic since day one. I've been using the eucalyptus and mint deodorant, and the smell is always super fragrant, and what I noticed most was just how long it lasted both on body and also in the product. I'm also a pretty busy guy and I work out a bit, and the deodorant I received honestly has not let me down yet and has always kept me smelling super fresh. And although Native is priced at a slight premium compared to conventional deodorants, it's really safe and effective. I actually enjoyed the products so much that I ordered more from them, and I've been using them consistently now for months. The other thing I loved about Native though was their commitment to eliminating things like aluminium, which may be linked to serious health ramifications, including breast cancer and Alzheimer's, from their products. Their selection is really big, and along with some great reviews from customers, there's pretty much something for everyone on their website. Some of the scents they have are coconut and vanilla, lavender and rose, and my favourite, as I mentioned, is eucalypt and mint. They also have free shipping and returns, and even offer a completely unscented formula and baking soda-free formula for people with sensitivities. So, for 20% off your first purchase, visit nativedeodorant.com and use the promo code SCARED during checkout. That's 20% off your first purchase at nativedeodorant.com and use the promo code SCARED at the checkout. I hope you guys take up Native on their generous offer, and without further ado, let's begin. This happened a while ago, so my recollection of this isn't going to be word for word, but here it goes. So I'm a teenager. Me and my mother live alone. We live, basically, in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town is a little less than an hour away, and the only things that are near us are a gas station and a bar. I know everyone who lives near me, and we rarely ever see new people in our neck of the woods. So just seeing someone who isn't familiar is definitely suspicious enough. And this is much creepier. So a couple of years ago, it was the middle of the night. Me and my mother are night owls. We like to be awake from that midnight to 6 a.m. time period that most people prefer to sleep during. My mother was watching TV in the living room, and I was using the computer in the kitchen. The kitchen and the living room are basically connected, so I wasn't too far away from her, only a few feet. The front door leads right into the living room. It's a door with 9 windows, so it's pretty easy to see in. My mum looked towards the door, and she saw somebody staring at her through the window, and he was wearing a hood that obscured almost all of his face. My mum jumped, and she of course walked to the door and asked him what the hell he was doing. According to my mother, he looked pretty young, but she could barely see his face, so who actually knows how old he was? The man said something along the lines of, "Could you help me with my car, please?" in a tone that I could only describe as miserable and kind of off-putting. Even though it was dark out, there should have been enough light for her to see a car, but there was no car anywhere, and the man was also holding his hands in his pockets pretty tightly, which was weird. My mother said no and apologized. This caused him to grab whatever was in his pockets tighter, so tight it caused his arms to tremble. He stayed for a few more minutes, and then he just swiftly disappeared. Throughout the night, maybe 1 or 2 hours later, we thought that we heard slight weeping, but we didn't see anyone at any of our doors and windows. I may be making assumptions here, but I can only assume that what this guy had was a weapon. He seemed to be at least concealing something in his pockets. This was obviously a very creepy experience, and it honestly seemed like he was trying to lure my mother out of the house to do something sinister to her. Also, a year ago, there was a very small metal plate jammed between the front door strike plate and the piece that goes inside of it. and I'm not really sure what that's called, but we have zero idea where this metal plate came from. But the metal plate stopped our doors from locking, so I'm assuming that it was put there so that somebody could get into it later. These things are probably not related, but it made me think about him because this was deliberately placed there by somebody, and we're not sure exactly why. So this is recalling a really weird experience that happened to me about 8 years ago when I was 9 or 10. So at the time, I slept on a bunk bed, but I didn't share the bed with anyone. I just preferred sleeping up high for some reason as a kid, and I don't know why, but I just did. Anyway, on this particular night, I couldn't get to sleep for some reason. I tossed and turned for a few hours before just giving up and going on my iPad to watch some good old YouTube. After a while, I decided to check the time on my iPad, and it said 3:13. I remember that very vividly for some reason, but anyway, right after I checked the time, that's when a big bright light just came shining through my window, between the blinds next to my bed. It was so bright that it was like a floodlight from a stadium was just shining into my bedroom. And this light was really weird for two main reasons. Well, apart from the obvious of why the hell was there a bright light in my room in the first place. But the first one was that my window faced sideways with a tall fence next to it, so it couldn't have been the neighbors. And the second was that the light appeared to be spinning or something really fast. Then, after about maybe 30 seconds, there was a big loud metallic bang, and it was so loud that it left my ears ringing. I still don't know how no one woke up from it, but maybe they did and they just ignored it. I don't know, but it's also possible that my brain was just so overtired at this point that I made it all up, right? I don't really know, but after the loud bang, the mysterious light just stopped spinning and just shone through my window. I really don't know where 10-year-old me got the guts to do so, but I decided to climb down the ladder and go over to the window to investigate. As I walked over to the window, my head started pounding and my hands and feet just went numb. The last thing I remember is moving away the blinds and looking out, although I can't remember what I saw out there. And the next thing that I remember is that I woke up in my neatly made bed, on top of my blanket with my legs laid together and my arms crossed on my shoulders like an Egyptian or someone going for communion. I had no pain or anything, just a slight sense of disorientation and dizziness, but that was it. My video was still playing, but only about 20 or so seconds passed from where I last remembered. But the big difference was that it was now 5:30, which didn't make any sense. In the morning, I didn't tell my family. I can't tell you why, but I just felt scared or shocked, and I still haven't talked about it with them since. They believe that I'm telling the truth, but they have no explanation for what could have happened. I do believe that life exists on other planets, but I'm very skeptical of aliens that have visited Earth. I don't know if I was abducted that night or not, but I have no other explanation for what it could have been. If you have any idea or theory, then please comment below, as I really have no clue, almost 10 years later. So before I begin, I would just like to say that I was at one point in time a non-believer when it came to paranormal experiences. The idea of ghosts and spirits was only entertained by myself when Halloween was nearing. Never something that I thought would leave me afraid of being alone in my house or anything. Anyway, to begin, there are several situations that have taken place in my home over the past 10 years. However, I want to focus on one more recent chain of events, and for context, I live in a 3-floor home, basement, main floor, upstairs, with my parents and my older brother. I'm 24 and I work a 9 to 5, so my experiences often happen later in the evening. On occasion, when I work from home during the day, I also have these experiences too. So, my older brother for the last few months has had several weekends where he's been home alone. My older brother is that very stereotypical guy's guy, masculine, pretends not to be afraid of anything and acts as though nothing in the world could ever bother him. Which is why I found it odd that I received a message from him one weekend at around 2 a.m. while I was out in the city with some friends. And the message said, "Please stop making so much noise, I'm trying to sleep." Now, I am notorious for coming home late when I told everyone that I wouldn't be home at all. I'm also guilty of stomping my feet when I walk and shutting drawers and doors a tad harder than I have to. When I saw this message, I was slightly concerned as I instantly assumed the worst, that my house and subsequently my brother were being robbed. And when I told him that I was in fact not home, he explained that he was hearing drawers opening and closing. After prompting him to look outside his door, he said the sound was coming from my parents' room. And like a guy who thinks nothing can hurt him, he marched into their room to find absolutely nothing. No drawers open, no home invaders, nothing out of the ordinary. But he was adamant about what he had heard. In the end, I just kind of wrote it off as him being a bit nervous about being home alone, and I didn't think much more of it. That is, until last weekend when I was home alone with my puppy, as my parents had gone out to dinner. Now let me tell you too that this dog is one of the most tame and gentle creatures that you could ever meet. I mean, when she sees new people, she barks excitedly, and it's a very, very unique bark, almost like a whine with a low bark followed by more whining. Anyway, she was on my bed and I heard her give a low bark, and it was more of a grumble than a bark though. I turned around from my desk and I saw her staring into the dark hall, but her head was cocked like she was staring at something with interest. That was when she jumped off my bed and slowly skulked into the hall. At this point, I pretended like nothing was happening. I just turned my back to my computer and kept playing my game. However, I was quickly interrupted when the barking of my dog turned into a friendly bark as though welcoming someone into our house, which was a huge red flag. So I took a deep breath and I called her name, and she just ignored me, which had never happened before. We trained our dog to come when she heard her name, and she is still young, so we reward her with treats, so she comes every time. And for her to ignore a treat like that, it must have meant that she was really excited and distracted. I called her again, but again, nothing. I did it again and nothing again, so I decided that it was time to be brave, and I walked towards the barking, which in this case was my parents' room. Quietly, I skulked in and I flicked the light on to see her just staring at a wall with her tail wagging happily. When I entered, she instantly padded to my side and just followed me back to my room. I just want to point out too that at this point, the hairs on the back of my neck were standing right on end. I honestly felt terrified, and I was even tempted to just run out of the house. I'm unsure if the feelings of being so unnerved were because there was something there or because I was just spooked by my dog's behavior. I really don't know, but what made it all so much worse is that this exact same thing happened 2 more times afterwards. My dog would be on my bed, cock her head as she looked into the dark hallway, and then she'd begin happily to bark at the wall in my parents' room, ignoring the fact that I was calling her name. The reason that this really spooked me too is because just prior to my last dog being put down, she started to exhibit really strange happenings just like this. We honestly thought that it was just the medication, but she too would also bark in my parents' bedroom as though she was greeting someone. This is just one of many weird situations that have taken place in my home, but I felt like I needed to share this because I feel like I'm just going nuts. I really hate feeling so unnerved in my own home. I was 14 years old and embracing rebellion against my parents, administrators, and anyone else who tried to stand in my way. A year earlier, I was arrested at school for possession of marijuana, and I was forced to attend court-ordered NA, along with other rehab counseling and stuff like that. My mother had dropped me off at a sketchy area of town for my weekly meeting that lasted from 8 to 10 p.m. It was summertime, so the sun had actually set before I got out. The NA meeting was hosted in a halfway house on a block that had been pretty much occupied by nothing but other halfway houses for the longest time. My mother was unaware of this at the time as well. The guys in my NA group were honestly amazing. They'd been through hell and came out on the other side. They listened to me, understood me, gave me advice that I would cherish for years to come, and eventually even protected me from grave danger. But the house my NA meeting was located in happened to be on a one-way street with no street parking. However, there was a gas station around the corner that had ample parking, so my mum told me to walk about 2.5 blocks to the gas station after the meeting for her to pick me up. After my group one night, I made my way up the street, headed for the gas station, which was directly behind the houses I was passing. I got to the last house on the block, right before I planned to turn left to go on the block west to my pickup, and that's when I saw them. There was a group of men on the porch, maybe 5 or 6, and one with a mirror on his lap, and they immediately called out to me, asking my name, what I was doing, stuff like that. I ignored them and I just sped up my pace, but before I could get past, they were walking towards me. One of them just kind of randomly asked for the time, and it was at this point that I immediately knew that I had to run. I sprinted back down the street from where I'd come, and they proceeded to chase after me. I knew that I couldn't outrun them, so I dipped into a driveway, dove under a parked truck, and I hid, knowing my life was on the line. But they followed me within inches of where I hid. I could hear them saying, "Where the hell did she go? Find her." I trembled, lying on my belly underneath a truck, waiting for someone to just drag me out by my ankles. They searched the yard, and I could hear them pushing through the bushes to find me. After several minutes, which felt like an eternity, they decided that I must have gotten away and returned to their halfway house. After several minutes, which felt like an eternity, they decided that I must have gotten away and returned to their halfway house. I slid out from under the truck and I climbed a fence that separated the property that I was on from the house my meeting was in. I ran back into my meeting house where they were still gathered, and I told them what happened. I wish that I could still remember their names, but I'll never forget the way that they comforted me and the protective nature they displayed. As soon as I told them what happened, several of them stood up and they took action. I don't know what they did, but I was chaperoned by the few guys that stayed behind, back to the gas station where my mother was just waiting anxiously. But we told her the scenario, and she took me to the police station to make a report. We never heard if any legal action was taken, but I have no doubt that my NA boys unleashed a furious vengeance on all of those guys. I really do wish that I could have spent more time with them. G'day mates, it's Busta here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you would like to help me out, then please go ahead and watch another video by clicking on a card on the screen. As always guys, thanks for all the love and support, and I'll see you mates in the next one.